A big Hollywood liberal's glamorous wife is putting both of their lives at risk to fight injustice against women and children enslaved by ISIS. That's right, Amal Clooney, a 39-year-old attorney best known as the wife of actor George Clooney, is pressing the United Nations to put ISIS leaders on trial for the enslavement and gang rape of a Yazidi woman, Nadia Murad. Murad saw her brothers and mother slaughtered along with most of the rest of her village, and then she endured the soul-crushing indignity and pain of repeated gang rape. Not only has Amal Clooney traveled to refugee camps to gather testimony about ISIS atrocities, but the Clooneys have taken Nadia Murad, the former ISIS prisoner and rape victim, into their own home. They've also teamed up with Google to build schools for tens of thousands of Syrian children who live as refugees in Lebanon, hoping that education will vaccinate them against Islamist jihadism. Now, Stephen Green, conservatives tend to rap liberals for being all heart and no head. But what do you make of this whip-smart young liberal attorney who's willing to risk her own head to stop a genocidal cult?
I would like to applaud this woman for taking this stance. What a brave thing to do. I think it was Bill who said during our pre-show call that she's not facing maybe a major risk, but it's certainly a real risk to her life. And think of the headlines ISIS could generate if they managed to do something like kill her or her husband, George Clooney. But you know, this whole thing, it speaks to a broader issue. There is an ethnic cleansing going on that the media has largely ignored over the last 5 to 10 years, and that ethnic cleansing that's going on is driving the few remaining Jews and the hundreds of thousands or millions of remaining Christians out of the Arab Middle East, from Algeria to Iraq. This has been going on for years. The media has largely ignored the story. Now the left seems to have picked up on it now that it is now that women, more specifically speaking, are the victims. It's not so much that they're Christian women, but that they are women, and this speaks to progressive values. And I'm not gonna argue. I'm not gonna hedge on that this time. And the reason is, if they're taking notice and taking action, well, good for them. I'm sorry. I'm honestly sorry it took this long, but even more so, I'm happy that they're taking notice and taking some action. That's a wonderful thing.
Well, for our viewers, Amal Clooney was born in Lebanon, but she was raised in London. And Bill, Clooney is now calling for, in effect, a new Nuremberg trial. And she told the United Nations General Assembly that if you can't stand up against rapists and child abusers, what can you do? Bill, is Clooney just tilting at windmills, or is she opening a new front in the war on terror?
I'm going to go with B on this one, Scotty. One of the things that we most often criticize leftists, especially leftist celebrities, for is virtue signaling, which, as most people know by now, is showing everybody how good you are without actually having to be good. It's unearned moral superiority. When Leonardo DiCaprio flies in his private jet 8,000 miles to pick up an award for helping to save the planet through his promotion of global warming agenda, that's virtue signaling. This is something completely different. This is a person who's taking on a case. Again, I don't think the risk is terribly high, but it's more. She's more at risk than she was before.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that Pam Geller, who's done just incredibly brave work, has a 24-hour bodyguard. And let's also not forget that at a convention she was speaking at, it was two men, wasn't it, Scott?
Yes.
Heavily armed men were about
Garland,
to go
Texas.
in there and just gun people down in Garland, Texas. It was prevented by a policeman. So there's that aspect of it. I don't want to tell tales out of school exactly, but I used to be an editor on a show called Sunday Morning Shootout. It was a movie talk show, and I did 180 episodes over 5 years. And one of the very last shows I cut was with George Clooney, who was making his second or third appearance. And I think he'd just come back from Dakar, someplace like that. And he had told the story. He was in very low mood, very low spirits. And they asked him, what's wrong? And he said, well, we went and built this well for these people, give them fresh water, and the well worked great, and then we left. And then 4 or 5 days later, these bandits came down out of the hills, killed everybody, stole the water, and ruined the well. And you could just see the heartbreak on his face. There's a lot of people that most liberals want to do good. Most progressives really do want to do good, as do conservatives. Sometimes we just differ about the methods. But I have nothing but the highest praise for her, and the idea of a Nuremberg trial for these murderers and butchers would be just absolutely ideal.
Well, at a time when some leftists seem more concerned about microaggressive Islamophobic remarks against American Muslims, and some populists seem to damn all Muslims because of the terrorists, Amal Clooney stands beside an actual victim and wages legal and public relations war against true criminals. We've previously on this show decried the silence of the feminist left over the abuse of women in Muslim countries. But the Clooneys came face to face with Nadia Murad, not some abstraction, but an actual person. And that gave wings to their hearts and feet to their feelings. What they're doing on behalf of helpless victims of literal Islam is one of the most fundamentally decent things I've heard this year. Frankly, if we'd all take half of the money we invest and half of the effort we exert in the political arena and use it to bless someone who lives in a tent on the outskirts of civilization, our civic dialogue might drift away from partisan attacks and find its way toward compassionate solutions. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.